Dear friends, today I am going to discuss another important acts enacted by the British Parliament in 1784, that is Pitt's India Act. Pitt the Younger became the youngest Prime Minister of England in 1783 at the age of 24. Pitt was an outstanding administrator who worked for efficiency and reform, bringing in a new generation of outstanding administrators. The East India Company Act 1784, also known as Pitt's India Act, was an act of the Parliament of Great Britain intended to address the shortcomings of the Regulating Act of 1773 by bringing the East India Company's rule in India under the control of the British government. British government enacted the Regulating Act in 1773 to control the activities of the company. The Act set up a system whereby it survived, regulated the work of the company, but did not take power for itself. The Act had proven to be a failure within a few years, and the British government decided to take a more active role in the affairs of the company. Pitt's India Act established the system of dual control of India by the government of Great Britain and the British East India Company. These changes continue till 1858. Pitt's India Act of 1784 was introduced by the British Parliament to bring the administration of East India Company under the control of British government. It was passed on the failure of Regulating Act of 1773, also known as East India Company Act. That Pitt's India Act of 1784 provided for a joint government provided by the company that represented by the directors and the crown that represented by the board of control. By 1773, East India Company was facing an acute problem of financial crisis and asked for monetary assistance from the British government. British rulers found that the company was running in loss due to nepotism and corruption of the company officials. The British government enacted the Regulating Act of 1773 to control the activity of the company, and Warren Hastings was elected the first Governor General. But the law failed to be effective in order to prevent corruption, and Hastings himself was charged for corruption. Then British government decided to take a more active role and interfere with the affairs of the company. So it was the second important step undertaken by the British Parliament to set up a board of control under Pitt's India Bill of 1784. A board was established with 6 members, 2 of who were the members of British Cabinet and 4 were of Privy Council. The president of the board soon became the minister for the affairs of the East India Company. The board had all the powers to control the civil, military, and revenue related affairs of the company. After some time, the council was reduced to 3 members and the Governor General was given the power to rule the majority. The independent power of the governors of Bombay and Madras were cut down, whereas the governor of Bengal was given more power in cases of wars, revenue, and diplomacy. Thus, Calcutta automatically turned into the capital for the company activities. A supplementary bill was passed in 1786 and Lord Cornwallis was appointed as the Governor General. Thus, Cornwallis became the first effective ruler of the British India under the authority of Board of Control and the Court of Directors. The General Constitution established by Pitt's India Act did not change much from the company's rule in India. Again, the Charter Act of 1813 closed all the business activities of the company, and henceforth the company became purely an administrative body under the authority of the Crown. After this, Governor General and Council had power to pass the laws and regulations for the British and native people of India. Now come to discuss the silent features of Pitt's India Act 1784. A board of control was established that contained maximum 6 parliamentarians. The board was headed by the senior cabinet member, who was the director and superintendent to control the affairs of the company related to territorial possessions in the East Indies. There should be a secretary committee established by the Court of Directors, which could act as a link between the board and the court. There should be 3 members in the Council for Governor General. One of the members should be Commander-in-Chief of the King's Army in India. In any case, the members of the Council present in a meeting equally divided into their opinion, the Governor General had the authority to decide by 2 votes, one his own and the other was the casting vote. The government should stop experimenting with revenue matters and should set up permanent settlement with zamindars at moderate rate of revenue demand. The government should establish permanent administrative and judicial system for governing the new kingdom. All activities and military officials must provide a full inventory of their property in India and Britain to the Court of Directors within 2 months of their joining. If the civilian or military officials are caught guilty of corruption, they would be inflicted with severe punishment, including seizure of property, dismissal, and also jail. Military or civilian officers receiving gifts in kinds or cash from kings, zamindars, or other Indian subjects would be alleged with charge of corruption. Lord Charles Cornwallis was appointed by Parliament to implement the Pitt's India Act. He joined at 1786 and he was given the responsibility of reformatory work. Lord Cornwallis introduced permanent settlement, announced a judicial court, and established an administrative and policy system. His mission was completed in 1793 and he left India for war. Now let us discuss about the provisions of 1784 Act. With the Pitt's India Act of 1784, East India Company's political functions were differentiated from its commercial activities. In political matters, the company, which was till now working as somewhat sovereign, was made directly subordinate to the British government. To enable this, a board of commissioners was created, which was called Board of Control. 6 peoples, which the Chancellor of the Exchequer, the Secretary of State, and 4 privy councillors nominated by the King were the members of this Board of Control. The Secretary of the State was entitled as the president of the Board of Control. This Board of Control was empowered to control all matters of civil or military, government or revenues. The board was given full access to the company's records. It had the powers to send governors to India and full authority to alter them. The result of the creation of Board of Control was like the Pitt's India Act 1784 actually provided for a joint government of the company and British Crown in India. So now the fate of India people would decide the company and the British government. The company was to be represented by the Court of Directors and the Crown was represented by the Board of Control. There was a secret committee of the three directors which had to transmit the orders of the board to India. This secret committee was to work as a link between the Board of Control and the Court of Directors. The Board of Control had no independent executive power. It had no patronage. Its power was approval was necessary. Its power was unveiled. It had access to all the company's papers and its approval was necessary for all dispatches that were not purely commercial. And in case of emergency, the board could send its own draft to the secret committee of the directors to be signed and sent out in its name. Now see the impact of this act. The Governor General's Council was now reduced to 3 members, one of whom was to be the Commander-in-Chief of the King's Army in India. The Governor General, a Crown appointee, was authorized to veto the majority decisions. The Governor General was given the right of casting vote in case the members present in a meeting of the Council shall anytime be equally divided in opinions. The Governor of Presidencies of Bombay and Madras were deprived of their independent powers, and Calcutta was given greater powers in matters of war, revenue, and diplomacy. Thus, Calcutta becoming, in effect, the capital of company possessions in India. The Governor General Council was now under indirect control of the British government through the Board of Control. By a supplementary act passed in 1786, Lord Cornwallis was appointed as the second Governor General of Bengal, and he then became the effective ruler of British India under the authority of the Board of Control and the Court of Directors. Act of 1786, Governor General given the power to override the Council and was made Commander-in-Chief also. Disclosing of property, all civil and military officers of the East India Company were ordered to provide the Court of Directors a full inventory of their property in India and in Britain within 2 months of their joining in their posts. Severe punishment was provisioned for corrupt officials. The constitution set up by Pitt's India Act did not undergo any major changes until the end of the company's rule in India in 1858. Now come to assess the Pitt's India Act 1784. This act removed many faults of regulating act of 1773. It ended an inappropriate division of authority in India by making the Governor General supreme over the subordinate governments of Bombay and Madras. By reducing Governor General Council's members to 3, it removed one of the shortcomings of Regulating Act 1773, as now Governor General found easier to get majority in any decision and in case of tie, he had final say. The act was deemed a failure. This was because very soon it became apparent that the boundaries between the government control and the company's powers were nebulous and highly subjective. The act was a naive one. It divided the responsibility between the board of control, control of directors, court of directors, and governor general in council. But again, no boundaries could be fixed as the matter was subjective and not objective. The British government felt obliged to respond to humanitarian calls for better treatment of local peoples in British occupied territories. The Board of Control was alleged for nepotism. This is all of the assessments of the Act, Pitt's India Act 1784. Thank you for listening me.